Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Don Gates, an alcoholic. I enjoyed all of the birthday people tonight. Doreen there, was that how it was pronounced? Written down here. Yeah, Doreen. It's good to see you young people coming in and not having to go through the hell I did, I'll tell you. Her spiritual message about her happiness last year because her income increased is something I appreciate. My friend and mentor, Chuck Chamberlain, was so extraordinarily spiritual, as most of you people who've been around a little while know. But I remember one time I stopped in at his office, and he and his son, Bill, who worked with him, there was a certain mood in the air, you could almost cut it with a knife. And Chuck was saying, well, you might have checked with me before you made that bid. And I walked in and said, well, I guess I'm here at the wrong time. You're talking business. No, Donald, God has sent you to me. I have nothing else to do but talk to you. And I said, well, I know, Chuck, but on the other hand, you're engaged in business, and with me, my serenity goes up and down with my bank account. And Chuck's son leaped up and said, that's you, Dad, God damn it, that's you. So those of you who've been around long enough to believe that Chuck walked on water, it's not quite true. He was quite human. In fact, if he were not, he would have been of no use to me. And who was there? Oh, another, Robert, who had the 13 years, he talked about his gratitude for people who went out and experimented unsuccessfully for him. And I'm proud to say I never asked anyone to do anything I wasn't willing to do myself. But probably the most incisive one was our 90-day chip. Sean, was it? He said he had found the answer, and it was obvious what he had found, because I remember one time I was speaking down in Texas along the wall where we usually at the AA clubhouses have our various maxims and slogans and pusillanimous platitudes. Easy does it, first things first, live and let live. I mean, two impossible suggestions in one short sentence. They don't ask your permission and they won't let you. But they had an extra one that said, if you want to stop drinking, you're going to have to stop drinking. And I thought, that's the dumbest thing I think I have ever seen, even in the state of Texas, where stupidity is a motto. I think it's on the state seal. But the more I reflected on it, I thought, good Lord, as so often happens in the great Southwest, they have captured the essence of Alcoholics Anonymous. I mean, that is the secret. Everything else is helpful to your sobriety, but if you want to stop drinking, you're going to have to stop drinking. I've met a few people that I haven't seen in many years, and I enjoy that too. I understand you haven't been in this hall too long. That's why I didn't recognize it when I came over. I turned the wrong way. The traffic is horrible on a Friday night on the San Diego freeway, coming no matter which way you're going, but it doesn't seem quite fair when you're as spiritual as I am that you should get stuck in those traffic jams. But the rain does fall on the just and the unjust alike. I'm in a fairly good mood this period. I'm in the process of retiring, as I was mentioning to someone. In fact, I had to write a letter a couple of days ago because one of the legal newspapers wrote a big article on me and broke my anonymity, and I had to explain to them that that's something we request they not do. It isn't the newspaper's duty to avoid it, but they should be reminded when it does happen. But you're in for a treat because it said in the article that I was a great AA speaker and was asked to speak at a lot of meetings, so I know you're in for a treat. But it is true, I speak more than is good for most mortals. In fact, I've been speaking on the average of twice a week for almost 40 years. And you would think I had learned something in that period, but the longer you're around, the less certain you are of why you are sober. I mean, you understand how it works because that's read like the Chinese water torture at every AA meeting. But as to why it works, so if you are fortunate enough to stay sober, at first it's a little hard because try as you will to adhere to the instructions that you do not try to intellectualize AA, you will almost certainly, as all of us do, encapsulize it into a little AA spiritual capsule that you can give it to a newcomer that he can swallow it and pass a miracle, as it were. And they refuse to do it out of sheer spite and stubbornness. And then it gets worse because you'll find people staying sober the wrong way. Well, that is a challenge when you're new. I'd rather see him in a drunkard's grave than sober like that, I'll tell you. But then in time you will find out that you don't really know why you are sober. And as a result, you become like the old-timers. You don't want to change anything because that may be what's doing it. I can remember 35 years ago, clubhouse out in Burbank, broken apart, schism right down in the middle because someone suggested putting in air conditioning. And the old-timer said, "We can come down, court, not comfort, we can't sobriety." That's how old-timers spoke in Burbank 35 years ago. Actually, that's how old-timers speak in Burbank today. But I was so new, I didn't know that perspiration and sobriety were necessarily synonymous conditions. But, now I'm not so sure. And as a result, I'm proud to say I have fought every innovation and improvement in Alcoholics Anonymous for almost 40 years. But being in the process of retiring and moving from the area, I probably won't pass this way again in the near future, so maybe I should tell a story or two from my past that I don't talk too much about my alcoholism, partly because I'm horribly bored with the scenario, but in addition, most people under the guise of telling what they used to be like really just describe things that happened to them, almost implying that they did it on purpose. I've heard them say, "I can't blame the things I did whilst drinking on the flit." And I always think, "Oh, you poor soul, that must be tragic." I can. Almost every rotten thing that happened to me, I can blame it on it. I never even planned to be an alcoholic. I never walked into some counselor's office and said, "I think I'd like to major in vomiting." Perhaps a minor in diarrhea would be good. I think it was our leader who mentioned about who had mentioned about her drinking and her problems. Many years ago in the American Medical Journal, there was an article on alcoholism. They gave a number of definitions for it because as yet it hasn't really been adequately defined. AA's answer description is probably the best of all, but it described it in various ways. Some humorous, like you become an alcoholic when you stop bragging about how much you can drink and start lying about how much you do drink and so on. But the one I really liked the best was an alcoholic is a person who drinks to escape the problems created by drinking. And considering the problems we had when we drank, it's no wonder we drank. So to describe the things that happened to me doesn't really tell you what I was like. I was like every alcoholic I ever knew. Kind, gentle, loving, giving, compassionate, understanding, like one of our ex-presidents who used to say, "Come, let us reason together. Let us do it my way." And they won't do us. They smite us the 99 blows, and if we retaliate once, they send us to this pariah's nest. So to describe the things that happened to me, because I don't think I ever had an evening of drinking go the way I planned it. I never said to myself, "Well, Don, what'll we do? It's Friday night. I got a pint in the house. I think I'll kill that, and then I'll go out and total a car. I just canceled the insurance to save money, so that'll be a good start." Perhaps on the way to the hospital, the ambulance attendant will roll me so I'll have no identification, and I can spend 24 hours being humiliated down at General, but I'll get out on Sunday and I can cuff another jug on the way home, and I can terrorize the wife and children all day Sunday afternoon. I mean, it's obvious, I'm certain from the moment I rose that I'm far too gentle, distinguished, and a soul to do things like that, but they happen to me. In fact, AA comes out in everything we do, and I shouldn't get into that, but I wrote a decision a while back, and I used to boast about what a good father I was. How every Sunday I took my children out for a drunk drive, and I actually wrote a decision. I didn't intend to publish it, but it became published. It began one Sunday morning appellate while out for a drunk drive and so on. I got calls from the newspapers. But I will describe this one because it became kind of a classic thing. I was always able to justify the incidents of social conflict that I got into while drinking. Because to get into conflict with society, it is mandatory that another member of society be involved. And when that occurs, you can always blame them because to some extent they share responsibility for the incident. If he hadn't have made a left turn, I wouldn't have hit him. Which is true, but if I hadn't been an unguided missile coming down the street. But I was always able to rationalize and justify it until this incident that I will describe. I should preface it by saying I drank almost exclusively to relax. And on this occasion, I'd been relaxed maybe 5 or 6 days. And I awakened from a tormented and fitful sleep. I'd had nightmarish visions of Dante's Inferno. I could almost smell the sulfur and saw the imps. And I staggered to my feet, and it wasn't just a dream. I was actually drenched with perspiration. And I thought, what's wrong? Maybe it even fleetingly did occur to me that alcohol might have played some role, but I quickly perceived such was not the case, because I looked down on where I had been in repose, and it was a couch in the front room. I obviously had passed out. I had nodded off, my family having gone where they used to go at night, and wherever that was, and there was a thin spire of smoke coming up from the couch through a tiny hole where my head had been. And I realized that what had happened was I'd had a cigarette in my hand or my mouth, and when I'd nodded off, it had fallen onto the covering of this couch, burning through into the matting, into the tacking inside, where lacking oxygen to take flame, the coals had simply spread over the course of the night, and I realized that drink was not my problem. I had simply been barbecued. So commending myself on my perspicacity, I went into the kitchen, I got a pitcher of water, came back and tried to pour it into that tiny little hole, creating a rather spectacular cascade on the carpet, but little else. And so I knew more dramatic measures were required. I went into the kitchen, I got a butcher knife, I came back, I slashed the couch open from one end to the other, spread it apart, exposing the embers, and then was able to subdue them with the cooling balm of the water. And the only thing was that it produced acrid black smoke. Now this has been 50 years ago, half a century, a quarter of this nation's history. And yet I can still remember standing there, looking down at that slashed and sodden mass, realizing that almost to a certainty my wife was going to notice it. She was a very keen-eyed woman. There was little that passed her ken around that house, I'll tell you. And although this was long prior to knowledge of Al-Anon on anyone's part, still she was a good woman. I mean, she would never intentionally say or do anything to assail the head of the household, to emasculate the man of the house. And yet, in moments of stress and strain, she had been known to say things that were unkind, cruel even, things that would cause her great remorse when she subsided and realized what she had said. She might say, "You drunken son of a bitch, you did it again, didn't you?" Or, something like that. And this would cause her pain when she reflected on it, and I wanted to spare her this. The only thing is I didn't know what to do about it. And then it finally dawned on me, get it out of the house. Out of sight, out of mind. I mean, she might vaguely remember there had been something on that side of the room, but get it the hell out of here. Well, it isn't easy to be moving a bed couch when you should be checking into a sanitarium. But with that Herculean strength that comes only to the youthful, panic-stricken alcoholic, I somehow managed to heft that monster up onto my shoulder and lurch out the front door. At that time, we were living on the second floor of an apartment building that had a very small little porch. I remember there were columns. I virtually beat myself to death caroming off them, trying to make the turn, boom, 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 boom. But ultimately, I did effect the descent, and then I realized, like Bobby Burns' mouse, that foresight had not been my long suit. There is virtually no place to conceal a couch in a typical apartment patio. And so I'm standing there. I should be in a hospital, but I'm moving furniture. And I'm standing there, legs trembling, and I remembered a creek about 5 miles away. So I staggered and lurched to my car, and I hefted that brute up on top of it, and then got in to drive to my selected place of repose. Well, by this time, it was daylight. I don't know what time it was, 6:37, but it was daylight. There were people at the bus stops, with lunch pails and briefcases and things like that. I have no idea they stay up that late, but get up and take a look someday. You'll see them up there. Now, all of my life, all I have ever truly striven for is dignity. See, I have not cavilled at disaster when I could face it with dignity. But now, as I proceeded down the street, I noticed that these people at the corners at the bus stops, their heads all turned and followed my progress. Their eyes wide. jaws agape. And I thought, by golly, it doesn't take much to draw a crowd in California. I'll say that. Until I chanced to pass in front of an auto dealership that had a large mirror that was very dusty. A window that was very dusty and acted like a mirror. I got a reflection back of what it was they were looking at. Here's a guy proceeding down the street.
Sorry to interrupt your viewing. Taper Dave here. Just wanted to take a second to ask you to like and subscribe to my channel. Let me know if you like what you're listening. I've got some very good talks here, and this one's a great one. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Tell me what you think.
He got a week's growth of beard. He's nattily attired in a bathrobe, and he's driving down the street, and on top of his car rests a couch, which previously had lacked oxygen to take flame, but going down the street, the wind was going through it like a billows, and the flames were 30, 40 feet in the air. And when I ultimately returned home, I could not think of a single way to blame my sleeping wife and children for having imperiled their lives as they obviously had. And it did occur to me that perhaps booze was posing a problem. But that's enough of the drunkalogue. Just suffice it to say, subsequently I was to move beyond social drinking. In fact, I wasn't even getting in any trouble at the terminus of my drinking. How much trouble can you get into in a hotel room with a bottle of wine and a copy of Playboy? The maid doesn't step on you, you're reasonably safe. The only thing is you're dying in there. And then you decide to try AA. Very few people who come to AA try it, but half the people in this room be drunk before the year's out without question. Those of us who do go out, if someone says, have you tried AA, unless you have gotten down on your knees and prayed to something you don't believe in for guidance, and then taken pencil and paper and written the inventory that you've read to somebody, and they say, have you tried AA? Be honest and say, hell no, I haven't tried AA. I've gone to the meetings, laughed, felt superior to all the speakers, but I absolutely refused to try the program, so I'd have no idea whether it would work or not. I don't know why I say that. If you're that honest, you wouldn't be drunk. Strike that, Miss Reporter. But no, alcoholism, when I first came around, as I mentioned, that article I read in the medical journal, I used to read on things like that. Alcoholism seemed to me the most mysterious malady for which science had not only no cure, they didn't even have an adequate definition. And now it seems to me the simplest disorder ever to have afflicted mankind. The most easily recognizable, identifiable, and treatable. The very name, alcoholism, gives you such a marked clue as to what the problem is. Assuming that you weren't handicapped with a degree in psychology, and someone were to say to you, what do you think causes alcoholism? I warrant you'd come up with the correct response instantly. Alcohol? If alcohol had never been invented, there wouldn't be one person on the face of the earth that we would classify and discuss as an alcoholic. We don't have any different emotional graph than the non-alcoholic. There have been no new emotions invented in the last 10 millennia. I hear people get up and they describe their own particular little hang-ups or inabilities to get along with society, and very frequently they describe it as alcoholism. There's not. There's 9 people out there with the same disorders. You hear from us, I got so bad, I couldn't even go shopping, and that's alcoholism. No, it isn't. That's agoraphobia. It comes up in all kinds of different ways, and if you're new, and I understood there were some newcomers, I got here a trifle late, but don't worry about what the speakers tell you is alcoholism. They'll describe their own hang-ups. They may or may not be yours. God, I remember we came around, there was a guy, he used to say, if you want to make this program, first thing you're going to have to do is admit you're an alcoholic, and admit because of that you're a thief, because all alcoholics are thieves. But this troubled me, because I took quick inventory, and I did not steal things, material things. I stole your love, your affection, your time, your consideration, your anything that is worthwhile I took from you, but I did not steal your chattels. Now, maybe that was because I wasn't desperate enough, or maybe I was frightened. I don't know, but I didn't do that. And I thought, that's very troubling. And then I realized that guy doesn't know all alcoholics. Even if he had a wide range of acquaintanceship, he wouldn't know more than a few hundred. So what he tells you about all alcoholics tells you nothing about all alcoholics, but it tells you something very interesting about him. He's a thief. All X are alcoholics, and they steal. And I'm an alcoholic. Well, he's a thief. And he was. I used to watch him rip off newcomers. It went on for years. Didn't hurt anybody, but it became a tradition in our group. But there was another guy who was even more frightening. He used to look out at the audience, point a finger, and say, if you want to make this program, the first thing you're going to have to concede is that you are a latent homosexual. This really shook me, see, because I'm trying to quit drinking, and he's telling me I have to give up boys. Hell, I'd never tried them. And as far as I knew, they might be the answer. My wife was sure as hell out of control, I'll tell you that. And then I realized he didn't know all alcoholics, but I learned something about him. I mean, a great guy. We got along for years. I never knew him in a biblical sense, but I mean, so don't worry about all those things. When you get around to your inventory, you're going to find enough to keep you busy for the rest of your life. It is not, however, that our problems are different, but we indeed are different. We are bodily different from our fellows. And that is the major difference. You don't have to be mentally ill to make this program. It's no handicap if you are, but in fact, if you're truly mentally ill and can stay sober, the chances are you're going to become a guru. Can't find your ass with either hand, but you'll lead the multitudes forth. They will march in your yard on Saturday. And if any of you grasp the point of that little aside, let me say that I have never yet said anything harsh or cruel about someone that I did not greatly admire, and if I don't like somebody, I cut them out of my talk. But you don't have to be crazy. In other words, it doesn't matter what we have by way of race, creed, color, sexual orientation, it doesn't matter. We haven't, 1 out of 10 approximately is going to be an alcoholic. It varies, of course, to some extent with races, but not a great deal. We haven't had we had about 10 people walk on the face of the moon yet. One of them's already in AA. They check those guys pretty good. They're not wired right. They don't blast them off. And probably some of you heard him speak. Gives an interesting talk. I don't know that he actually, you hear from the podium that which you would like to hear, not necessarily what the speaker says. And the thing I liked in his talk, I don't know that he ever said it, but if he had a wit enough, he would have said it. He talked about stepping off on the moon, and the dust of the moon was about his boots, looking back at the blue-white globe we call the Earth, and for the first moment feeling a touch of panic, realizing he was 180,000 miles from the nearest liquor store. But we are physically different from other people. I was watching a show a while back on PBS. Probably some of you saw it, if you're the kind of people who watch those sort of shows, as many of us are. It had to do with the brain. It had nothing to do with alcoholism. I've given up. I'm not masochistic enough anymore to read things about alcoholism, but it was dealing with the brain, the incredible, absolutely astonishing concept of the synapses and the electronics, the things, and it goes on. It was just incredible to me. I'm fascinated by it. And just in passing, in one of the segments, it ran for several session, several days, but in one of it, they were just mentioning in passing that alcoholics do not produce endorphins naturally like the non-alcoholic does. Now, endorphins are those endogenous morphine that the body stimulates and produces to take care of you when you are in moments of stress. In other words, that's the runner's high. You do something which is good for your body. Back in the old days when you had to chase down game, it was necessary you keep able to run. Your body would produce endorphins to kill the pain. We didn't eat very often in the old days. Sometimes you go a long time. So fasting is a way to produce endorphins. You go out and sit on a mountaintop without eating for 40 days and nights, and you'll have discussions with Satan too. I mean, it's, want to jump? No. See, but we don't produce that, and so therefore, whenever stress and strain come along, we are way up or way down. The non-alcoholic, they rise and the endorphins kick in and they calm down. With us, it's like, you ever seen a TV set where you've turned up the color too hot, and the hues are red and green? It was just, everything is overblown, and that's the way we are. And I was absolutely fascinated by it because it answered so much for me. I mean, I mentioned, my friend Clancy, he stresses the psychological aspects of our disease. To me, that wasn't enough, meaning to tell me that between drunks, as our book says, we are nervous, irritable, discontented, restless. I don't doubt that. I mean, I have no doubt about it at all, but it doesn't tell why am I like that. What makes me that way? When I see this bit that we don't produce endorphins, when we don't have this endogenous morphine going in moments of stress, then I could understand it. See, because if you tell me that alcoholism had anything to do with discipline or willpower, hell, I'd still be drinking. I'm a very disciplined person. To the extent that it was within my prowess to achieve something and I set my goal to it, I did it. Sometimes non-alcoholics even say of us, you alkies, you're lacking in willpower. Do you know why they say that? They think we wanted to quit drinking. They think we wanted to stay sober. If they had understood what our true goal was, they would stand in awe and dedication at our perseverance. What the hell do they have they will pursue to the gates of insanity or death, huh? And nothing, the candy asses, all of them. I shouldn't say that. There's probably some Al-Anons here. If you are here, you are not at fault. You just seem to have been born that way. I mean, but when I saw this, it explained something to me. Because as long as people told me that it had anything to do with willpower, I fought it. But when I came around to AA, if I first realized I had a drinking problem, no one ever told me outside of AA until I got here that I had to quit drinking. They all said, Don, we're not Blue Nose, we're not WCTU. We don't ask you to quit drinking. We just ask you to take 2 or 3 and then stop like we do. The one thing the alcoholic can't do. There was a fellow who owned an aircraft company out in the valley. And this is many years ago. He had nothing to do with this thing I was just talking about, except that he pointed out that suppose a person were born with a headache, not a knock down to your knees, weep and cry and migraine, but a dull, throbbing headache that was with you constantly from the moment of your birth. How would you know you had it? You wouldn't. You would assume this is the natural condition of mankind. And you would then be in trouble because you'd look around at everybody else and they seem to do things easily and happily and have fun and get along and be sociable, whereas everything was a damn strain for you because of this headache. And then suppose when you were 14 or 15, someone gave you some aspirin and the headache went away. What would you do if you were not totally devoid of your faculties? You would take aspirin at every possible occasion, not because you were trying to escape, but so you could be like other people, be free of pain and participate. And then suppose after a period of time the aspirin turned on you and you began to take more and more of it. You were spending money you couldn't afford. It caused you to do things that were despicable to you. You drowned your honor in a shallow cup, sold your reputation for a song, hurt everybody you knew. What would you do if you're a decent person? I never met an AA who wasn't. You'd quit drinking. But the moment you do that, back comes the headache. And now you got to live with it knowing that relief is only a swallow away. I mean, that's what we are like. So we come into AA, and AA offers us a process of substitution, not elimination. It has to fill all of the things that alcohol did. And the reason that I guess I got off on this kick was that for years, any of you who have happened to hear my monologues know that I have urged people to get out and get into the business of living, to get it on, to do it. Moderation should be a rumor to us. We're like Oscar Wilde. Nothing succeeds like excess. And I would urge this because this was the way I lived. And I would describe the things I did, which I thought were just ebullient living. You know, I tell about this. Somebody asked me one time, why are you enthusiastic about your life in AA? Why is your program so much better? I said, I don't think it can do with my program. It's the things I do. I asked him, have you ever learned to fly an airplane? He said, no. I said, well, I did. I went out to the old anachronistic flight school out of Whiteman, took 3 hours of training, soloed, rented a plane that weekend, flew to San Francisco. It didn't have any instruments. I didn't know anything about navigation. I just flew over Highway 101. Ha! Work that steps, work that steps. Got through the male menopause racing motorcycles with Steve McQueen out in the desert. The only copy of the big book they used to see out around Barstow on Sunday. You know. Took my first free fall parachute jump just before I became a grandfather 25 years ago. I took up scuba diving. I know you're supposed to study with snorkels and flippers and things. I don't have the time. I mean, hum a couple of bars, I pick it up is my approach. And besides, they told me when I came around, everything the alcoholic needs to know is in the big book, so why in the hell would I fool with snorkels? I put on all of the equipment, jumped in off Catalina Island, so beautiful down in Seaweed City. I stayed there till I ran out of air. See, this is the nice thing, is that you come onto this program and life suddenly begins. Now you can do every single thing you ever wanted to do, and you can do it without chemical courage, because you have the greatest scapegoat ever known to man. You have your higher power. I haven't made a mistake in decades. No errors, no deviations from the path of valor or rectitude, no falls from valor, not the slightest faux pas I've been guilty of. On the other hand, God has seen fit to do through me some of the dumbest, most petty, egomaniacal, lewd, lurid, self-aggrandizing things of which you could conceive. But if it gives him pleasure to make me look like a horse's ass, who are you to criticize? Take it up with him. And the other speakers come in here and tell that what they say is their own opinion. That's not true. I've taken the third step. What I tell you is the Word of God. And you better listen up. The only trouble is he keeps changing his message about once a month, making me look like an utter boob for having misconstrued it in my last talk. But this is what I'm talking about. Get it on. Hell, I've hiked the Alps. I've gone down the length of Grand Canyon on a raft. I mean, I'm doing all of the... I run marathons. I had to quit smoking a few years back. And, when you stop something, you always look back on it and you think, how could I have done it? See, I come from the backwoods of Oregon, where we shoot deer and hang the venison in a smoke shed behind the farm. I know what smoke does to raw meat, but for 35 years I made lung jerky. They told me to get into running. Hell, I ended up running 5 marathons. But I saw this program, and then I realized everything I had done was a way to produce endorphins. Every sport I got into was a thrill sport. Fright produces endorphins. Why do people go on roller coasters? Scares the hell out of them. But as soon as they get off, want to go again, Ruth? They're high. And this is what I was doing. I didn't realize this. I'm not recommending any of those things other than the fact that I recommend you get on and get to living with it. We don't have that much time left. I mean, I know I'm old. In fact, I was going to get up, I sat down in the speaker's seat. I heard a young woman behind me saying, what's that old goat possibly going to say to help us young swingers? I mean, a fast bicycle ride and a love affair would kill him. And, that's not true. I go real good on a bicycle. I did the last LA marathon on a bicycle instead of running it. But But no, this is one of the handicaps of working a program, is you're going to grow older. You can avoid it by continuing to drink and use. You won't have to worry about that. But there isn't that much time left. I mean, even you young people here, 50 years, everybody in this room is going to be dead. A wink of a celestial eye. I mean, we rise like bubbles in champagne. Pop, we're gone. No, it has to be done right now if we're going to do it. If you want to do anything to improve society, strike a blow for mankind, you got to do it now. In the tomb, nobody raises their hand for righteousness' sake or any other sake. If you want to do something gentle, kind, tender, loving, lewd, you got to do that now too. Poet says, the grave, it is a fine and private place, but none, I think, do there embrace. It all has to be done right now. I know I'm old. Final poet said, the bird of time has but a little way to flutter, and the bird is on the wing. My bird doesn't have very long to fly, and I don't want to miss a single beat of those wings. And I hope some of you young people will stick around and we'll fly together. Thank you.
I think we got a great talk going on here. Thanks for watching the channel. Taper Dave here. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with, and it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone, through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst, then one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, oop, out, in, up, down. And then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right. But I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.